In August 1971, 24 completely normal college students walked into a fake prison in the basement of Stanford University. They knew it was an experiment, but 6 days later, researchers had to shut the entire project down. The ordinary participants had become creatively cruel, and the lead scientist had completely lost his grip on reality. Look at the raised fists in this photograph from the era. The United States was in the middle of the Vietnam War, and violent prison riots were breaking out across the country. The man in this portrait is Philip Zimbardo, a psychology professor at Stanford who wanted to answer a specific question. If you take healthy people with no criminal record and put them in a prison, what causes the brutality? Is it the people inside, or is it the system itself? To find out, he built an environment designed to test how easily human morality could be overridden by absolute, unchecked power. This wide aerial view shows the pristine, prestigious campus of Stanford University. But what was about to happen would take place entirely underground, hidden away in a chaotic basement corridor. For $15 a day, 24 psychologically healthy young men were randomly divided into two groups. A simple coin flip determined their fate. 12 would be guards, 12 would be prisoners. Before the first day even started, Zimbardo made a critical decision. He appointed himself as the prison superintendent. He stopped being an impartial scientist observing an experiment. By writing himself into the power structure, he became the active architect of the nightmare he was supposed to be studying. The dehumanization started on day one. As you can see in this photograph, actual local police officers publicly arrested the students at their homes. They were blindfolded, transported to the basement, and stripped of their names. From that moment on, they were only referred to by the identification numbers sewn onto their smocks. This image shows the reality of their confinement. The rooms were stripped bare, leaving only a cot in a tiny, claustrophobic cell. The researchers gave the guards no specific instructions on how to behave, yet within hours, they began inventing their own methods of control. They instituted mandatory roll calls, waking prisoners in the middle of the night just to make them stand at attention and recite their numbers. On day 2, the prisoners barricaded themselves inside their cells. They ripped off their ID numbers, shouting that they were student volunteers and that none of this was real. The guards retaliated with psychological warfare. They designated a good cell and bad cells, rewarding non-participants with better food. Then they suddenly switched the populations. The well-behaved prisoners were thrown into degraded conditions, destroying any sense of solidarity and proving that compliance meant nothing against absolute power. Under this pressure, prisoner 8612 began experiencing a severe psychological breakdown. He cried uncontrollably and demanded to leave. Zimbardo, acting as the superintendent, refused his request and instead offered him a deal: better treatment if he agreed to become a prison informant. By the end of the second day, the participants were no longer acting. The subjects and the researchers alike were trapped inside a shared institutional delusion. By days 3 and 4, roughly a third of the guards were exhibiting active sadism. They forced prisoners to clean toilets with their bare hands, withheld bathroom privileges until the cells reeked of waste, and punished the men by forcing them to mimic sexual acts. Even outsiders fell into the trap. When parents visited, they quietly followed the prison rules and thanked the guards for the visitation time. A real Catholic priest came to counsel the students and treated them exactly as he would treat actual inmates. The basement was swallowing everyone. That changed on day 5, when an outside psychologist named Christina Moslock arrived to conduct interviews. She hadn't spent the week in the basement. Her eyes were not desensitized to the slow escalation of cruelty. She watched guards march prisoners to the bathroom with bags over their heads, chained together at the ankle. Horrified, she confronted Zimbardo directly, telling him he was responsible for the very real suffering happening right in front of him. The experiment's architect was too far gone to see the damage. It took an absolute outsider to shatter the spell and force Zimbardo to recognize what he had allowed to happen. On August 20th, 1971, Zimbardo terminated the experiment 8 days early. In the debriefing, Several guards admitted they were disappointed it was over, having enjoyed the power. Many of the prisoners, walking out into the sunlight, reported they still felt like captives. The Stanford Prison Experiment became one of the most famous studies in history, but decades later, the scientific community began looking closer, and the consensus shifted. The study was heavily flawed. Unreleased audio recordings surfaced, showing Zimbardo and his assistants actively coaching the guards. They explicitly told the students to be tougher, to maintain the pressure, and to not let the prisoners get comfortable. The spontaneous emergence of cruelty that made the experiment famous was partly manufactured. The researchers pushed the participants toward the exact outcome they wanted to find. Today, psychological associations point to this study as a textbook example of ethical and methodological failure. It would never be approved by any institutional review board right now. But even with all the coaching and the rigged parameters, one chilling fact remains. The students who became guards were not selected for their dark traits. They were selected because they were normal. And yet, they invented tortures nobody asked for, in a fake prison in less than 6 days. It leaves an uncomfortable question that no amount of scientific criticism can fully erase. Given the exact same uniform, the exact same authority, and the exact same lack of consequences, what would you do?